Buddy, put that thing back in its holster. We haven't gone anywhere.
I don't understand.
Check out the MichaelDukesShow.com for information on how to get access to the podcast.
Welcome to the party, pal.
The Michael Dukes Show.
The greed and the entitlement is astounding to me.
What more could you want from a low-budget radio program?
This is a dumpster fire.
That was just BS.
It is time to get a new perspective.
We know just what you need, and we've got just the cure. Open wide and prepare for a steaming hot cup of freedom.
I just don't fathom it.
The Michael Dukes Show, streaming live across the world.
Live around the world on the internet at MichaelDukesShow.com and across the state of Alaska on this, your favorite radio station and or FM translator. Good morning, my friends. It's a musical today. Can you tell? We're about to burst into song at any point. It is Tuesday, and that means it's the deep dive with the weekly top three. It's the deeply dive. It's the deeply top three. Brad Keithley from Alaskans for Sustainable Budgets is about to jump on and talk with us about some crazy stuff. I mean, like, you knew it was coming, folks, but it's just mind-blowing to talk about it. We're going to talk about that with Brad here in just a second. In hour two, Chris Story's going to join us, but he's going to join us a segment early, and in his first segment, he's going to talk about the Fair Tax Act, which also, I'm sure, will blow some people's minds. You can hear politicians' brains snapping shut from here when we start talking about changing how we collect property taxes in the state. And then we'll do our weekly PMA update, positive mental attitude boost here with him in the second segment. Meanwhile, everybody around the state getting ready for another beautiful day here in paradise. Yes, we're ready to go. All right, let's jump in and see what's going on. Brad Keithley, Alaskan, who will not be singing today, playing his part. I will be dubbing all of his voice work in this morning myself. It's a lot of work, but we can do it. Good morning, Brad. How are you doing, my friend? How are things going?
The Keithley Weekly Deeply Dive. Is that how we're doing this now?
Weekly Deeply Dive. I don't know. It's all fun. It's all fun. It's all pain. We're all ready to go. I don't know. Brad, I'm trying to put a positive spin on it here. Let's do it. All right. Before we get too deep into this, yes, I did. Somebody's just asking me if I read the article about Senator Shower. For those of you who don't know, Senator Mike Shower is now resigning and is stepping down to go full time into the gubernatorial debate, which that's going to throw a whole new wrench into it. That's a thing for tomorrow when we have both Mike Shower and Bernadette Wilson on the program tomorrow. So it's going to be a busy day tomorrow. But Brad, hiya. There's a lot of stuff to cover here this morning. And of course, the first thing we knew that was going to happen happened. And that, of course, is well, first, before we get into the deep end, let's talk about what I mentioned yesterday, because people almost lost their mind when I quoted you from the message you sent me this weekend when you were like, holy cow, spending my free hours going through all these tax information because he's fun at parties, and then discovered that Alaska's taxes actually taxes the middle and lower income more than California taxes their gazillionaires. Walk me through this, Brad. What's going on?
Well, Michael, as you say, fun at parties. And just to prove that this weekend, I started going through some tax data, mostly because I wanted to put an Alaska flat tax, what an Alaska flat tax would look like, in context with other states that have flat taxes. There are now 14 states, 2 more on the way, that have flat taxes. The Tax Foundation has talked about it as a revolution, flat tax revolution. And Alaska would fit if Alaska adopted a flat tax to cover its deficits as opposed to using PFD cuts. Alaska would fit right in. As I was doing the chart, I threw in the top 10, the marginal rates from the top 10 states that have progressive income taxes, just for some perspective. And then separately, I've been working on some calculations with respect to what the PFD cuts does by income bracket in the state. And all of a sudden, it dawned on me what the result was. So if you've got the chart in front of you,
it's going to take a sec. I apologize. It'll take a sec, but it'll pop up in a second here.
So what I did was I charted the impact of using PFD cuts by income bracket on Alaskans by the low quartiles, low, middle, upper middle, and high by income bracket, and compared the impact of those to, compared the impact of those to the marginal tax rates, the highest marginal tax rates in the nation, the top 10 marginal state income tax rates. And what this chart shows, the flat tax is on the right, and I'll get to that at some point. But on the left, before the break, what this shows is the impact of PFD cuts by income bracket for three categories of income brackets in the red for Alaska. The first is the lowest 25%, the impact of PFD cuts as a share of income, what PFD cuts take as a share of income for the lowest 25%. The second over is the impact on the low 50%. So I combined the low 25% and the lower middle 25%. And then, just because I wanted to see what the result was, I did the lowest 75%, the impact of PFD cuts on the lowest 75%. And that's the third red bar from the left. And that shows the average impact of PFD cuts on lower middle, and upper middle income families as a share of income, as a percent of total income, using the latest IRS data for income. And then the blue bars next to that are the marginal rates, the highest rates, the rates that apply to the millionaires and the billionaires in each of the states in the top 10 states that have progressive rates, the top marginal rates in the state rates in the nation. And as you can see, California is there, 13.3%, highest marginal rate in the nation. Hawaii, which I hadn't really focused on before, has the next highest marginal rate, 11%. New York has the next highest marginal rate, which a lot of people talk about, at 10.9%. And then it goes on down from there in the remaining 10. That is the marginal rate, the highest rate, the rate they charge their billionaires in each of those states. And as you can see, as a share of income, as a percent of income, those rates are dwarfed by the impact of PFD cuts on the lowest 25%, on the lowest 50%, and even on the lowest 75%, the low middle, lower middle, and upper middle income families. To put this another way, to put it in a way that I've been trying to phrase this in a way that will show the impact, Alaska is the California of regressive tax rates. It is not only the California of regressive tax rates. When you look at the lowest 25%, you could add California's marginal tax rate plus New York's marginal tax rate plus Hawaii's marginal tax rate, and it would still be less than the average marginal tax rate on the low 25%. You could add California and New York, and you get pretty close to still being higher with the average marginal tax rate on Alaska's lowest 50%. So when you think about, oh my gosh, you think about what people say about California and New York. Oh my gosh, those marginal tax rates, they're driving people out of the state. They're driving people from California to Texas or from New York to Florida. Those marginal tax rates are horrible. They're having such a horrible effect on outmigration. Well, look at what Alaska's tax rates are doing to our lowest 25%, our lowest 50%, and our lowest 75%. If you want an explanation, if you want to understand why Alaska has outmigration in its working class, working family, working age families, if you want to understand what's going on, just look at those marginal tax rates. Just like California, just like we say, California and New York and Hawaii. Hawaii has other things going on, but California and New York are driving their high income families out of the state. Look at what those marginal tax rates are doing to California's, or looking to Alaska's middle income families.
Can you remind us, Brad, what these are quartiles, not quintiles? So can you remind us what is the, give us the ballpark of what is the low, middle, lower, middle, what is the range there? We're talking about 25, 50, 75.
It's really interesting, Michael. I've got the sheet, and it'll be in the Friday column, the precise numbers. But even the average income in the bottom 75%, the average income among lowest, lower middle, and upper middle, the average income is less than $50,000. Alaska has a huge skew between the average income for middle income families, low and middle income families, and the upper 25%. It is a huge skew. I mean, there's this huge gap that goes on between the two. If you average in, if you average in the top 25%, that red bar would drop down to where you see the first red bar on the right-hand side, 4.9%. That's because the averaging impact of the income from the top 20% really brings the average down. But so if my memory is about 17,500 maybe for the low 25%, maybe in the 25s, somewhere 26, 27, between 25 and 30 for the lower 50%, the average income for the lower 50%. But I'm pretty confident that I remember the number for the bottom 25%. Or bottom 75%, the lower and the combined lower and middle income classes is less than $50,000.
Now, this is an interesting comparison because, it's not necessarily proving anything except for our tax rate, this hidden tax rate through the PFD cut is highly skewed because, again, we're comparing, billionaires to lower and middle income and, or millionaires or the wealthy. But it's indicative of what's going on in the state as far as that take and how it's affecting the lowest 75% of income earners in the state. So that is an interesting take. No, there's not a whole lot of billionaires living in Alaska, but when you look at it and you realize that California is not even treating their marginal lowest 75% in the same way, you realize that this is a significant change for Alaska.
If I were to do the marginal tax rate on our millionaires, let's just pick millionaires. Let's not pick on billionaires. If I were to do the marginal tax rate for our millionaires in Alaska and put it in the context of those blues bars, it would be 0.2%, 0.2%, compared to Alaska's 13.3%. So it just shows that it demonstrates the regressivity of the Alaska tax system of using PFD cuts to raise revenues. The Alaska's millionaires or even $100,000 heirs are paying minuscule tax rates, average tax rates, marginal tax rates compared to those in the top 10 states, or indeed any state that has a progressive income tax. I could put all of them out there, and Alaska would still be the lowest. But what so while we're taxing our 100,000aires and our millionaires at a very low rate, we're taxing our middle and lower income Alaska families at an increasingly top rate. Right. And you can see how big that hit is by comparing it to the marginal rates that are in the other states.
And no, we're not talking about populations. This is a per capita this is about income, not about populations. Quickly here, 2 minutes. The flat tax, is that what's on the right here? This is the right-hand side of the equation.
Right. So this shows the flat tax by state. There are 14 states that have adopted it. There are 2 more that are in process of adopting it, a healthy chunk. And it looks at the flat tax by what the flat tax rate is. And I'd have to blow this up to figure it out. I don't have. Oh, there we go. Idaho's the top at 5.7%. Idaho and Utah, both states that are in the western region and states that are booming, have booming state economies, have higher flat tax rates than Alaska would if we covered our deficits through flat taxes as opposed to through PFD cuts. The other thing I looked at, some of these flat tax rates are misleading because the state has both a flat tax and a sales tax. And so the flat tax is lower than it would be if you were trying to recover all of their deficit through just the flat tax. So I looked at Alaska and said, okay, so what if we had a sales tax and a flat tax and we recovered half our revenue, half the deficit through the sales tax and half the revenue through the flat tax? What would Alaska's flat tax be? And that is comparable to many of the states who in this chart who also have sales taxes. And Alaska's flat tax rate at 2.4%, if we set it up that way, would be the lowest. Hang on a second.
Incoming voice call from Lorraine Epperson.
Would be the lowest flat tax rate in the nation. If we did it the same way some other states do. So a flat tax, I mean, people say well, we can't even afford a flat tax. Well, look at our regional competitors, Idaho and Utah, they have higher flat taxes, and our flat tax is about the same as several other states. And if we paired it with a sales tax that raised part of the revenue through a sales tax, our flat tax rate would be the lowest in the nation. So it's those who run around claiming, oh my God, we don't have enough of a tax base, we couldn't nearly raise enough through income taxes or through other forms of revenue measures as opposed to PFD cuts. Yeah, we can. I mean, and we fit right in the nation in terms of where we end up with a flat tax rate.
Brad Keithley, Alaskans for Sustainable Budgets. The weekly top 3 continues. We got more coming up. Number 2, dead ahead. This is a doozy. You're going to love this one. We'll be back. Don't go anywhere. The Michael Duke Show, common sense, liberty-based, free-thinking radio. We return with more right after this.
Running on 100% pure beard power. Oh, also some coffee. We dip our beard in coffee.
Ha, nice beard.
The Michael Duke Show.
Okay, Brad Keithley continues with us here. Alaskans for Sustainable Budgets. I'm just looking at some of the comments in the chat room here. Question, does the flat tax rate take into consideration income that's not taxed, such as the first $12,000 not being taxed? I don't know if it does or not, Brad.
No, a lot of states don't. Am I there?
Yeah, go ahead.
A lot of states don't have deductibles like that, so I didn't include a deductible like that. What David's talking about is the federal income tax. Not all states are based on the same basis as the federal income tax. They have different bases. So no, that takes into account all income. The Alaska flat tax takes into account all income. Yeah. And the 2.4% rate on the right could be the result not of pairing it with the sales tax, but of pairing it with raising revenues through reforming oil taxes. It could be paired with a lot of things that we improve POMB performance, PFD performance, or PFC, Permanent Fund Corporation performance. It could be paired with a lot of things, and we could bring that rate down. So it's just representative of what the rates would be under certain conditions.
And Jim asks, what tax system in Alaska, and you're talking about using PFD cuts, is as a form of effective, it's a tax. Effectively, it's a tax. And so that's what you're talking about here with this, is that it's a PFD cut.
There was an article. I mean, we should be past that point of arguing about whether PFDs are taxes. There was even an article in Must Read, a column in Must Read that talked about the PFD cuts as taxes. So yeah, I mean, that's what they are. That's what they've been throughout.
Wasn't it Matt Berman from ICER that basically said that, he said that this is effectively a tax, call it whatever you want, but it has the same effect as a tax. It's effectively a tax. So
yeah, it's like tariffs. I mean, at the national level, tariffs are called tariffs instead of taxes, but they're taxes. I mean, they are taxes on imports. And we just call them tariffs because they're a specialized kind of tax. PFD cuts are also a specialized kind of tax. They're still a tax. They're in the big umbrella of taxes. They divert revenue from private income over to the government, withhold and divert revenue over to the government. That's what a tax is, and that's what they are. So yeah, that's the system we're talking about.
It's interesting. This was, again, kind of a 10,000-foot view. David asked early on, he said, have you considered the benefits that the lowest 25% receive, like SNAP and free cell phones, Medicaid, et cetera? But I mean, this is the 10,000-foot view. It wasn't necessarily to dive down into the details, right?
Yeah, no. And I'm taxing them. I mean, to go back to his other question about whether I included a 12,000 deduction, I didn't. I tax the lower 25%. The PFD cuts. I mean, let's focus on this for a minute. PFD cuts tax the lowest 25%. They tax them at a huge marginal rate. So the tax system we use, the flat tax system we use, also taxes the lowest 20%, but it's a better tax for them. It's a lower tax for them. They save money. They have more income in their pockets by substituting a flat tax for PFD cuts. Yeah.
Well, look, I'm not a college graduate, but I mean, even I understand that the big red line, the 37%, that 4.9% is still much lower than 37%. Even I understand that, right? I mean, so yeah, if you were talking about a flat tax versus, this PFD tax on the marginal rate, yeah, it's pretty obvious that they would be better off with a flat tax at that point as well. It would be the upper incomes that would be screaming at that point.
Yeah,
because
but the thing about a flat tax that I think is the killer argument for it is no one pays any more than anybody else. Yes, proportionally. The Alaska as a share of income. The Alaska upper incomes would pay a bit more in terms of the share of their income using a flat tax as opposed to PFD cuts, but they wouldn't pay any more than anybody else as a share of income. Everybody would have the same skin in the game in terms of government costs. And as we've talked about before, I think that would motivate the upper incomes who now have no incentive, no financial incentive to push back on spending. It would motivate the upper incomes to start pushing back on spending.
All right, we're about to jump back in. This is going to be a doozy. I can't wait for this one. Let's go. The Michael Duke Show. Common sense, liberty-based, free-thinking radio. Like, share, subscribe, ring the bell. Let's do it.
The Michael Duke Show. Seriously humorous with a pinch of intellect. Sorry. That is humorous. Here's Michael Dukes.
Well, we knew that they were going to do it. We knew as soon as we saw the makeup of the education task force. It was confirmed when we saw the first tranche of guest speakers that they were going to have at the education task force. And lo and behold, look at what they're talking about already. They're already talking about how they need to increase the funding. Brad, this is all about the education task force and how they're looking for more. The funding is the answer. Funding is the answer. What we just need more money. Oh, we could kill all these other programs too. By the way, the Alaska Reads thing, which is actually showing progress. We should, but the money, we need more money. We knew it was coming, and here it is.
Well, yeah, we had a broad range of testifiers at last week's second meeting of the education task force, the bicameral education task force, and it was interesting. It was from stem to stern, basically people talking about needing more money. Very, very few ideas on how to raise the additional money that's needed. AML. I want to dive deeper into this, exactly what they're proposing, but AML,
the Alaska Municipal League. So just so people know what AML is.
Right. The Alaska Municipal League, thank you, had one proposal that was interesting because it said, let's take off the cap on local contribution. Let's allow local communities to contribute more toward education. If the local communities want more spending in their school system, let's allow them to contribute more. And that would have some ramifications at the state level because it would undo the reason we have limitations on local spending is to fit within federal guidelines for a funding source that brings about $150 million a year, if I recall correctly, from the federal government to the state government. if we took off the spending cap and allowed local governments to spend more if they wanted to on their school districts, it would increase the disparity between the top spending districts and the lower spending districts, the consequence of which we would no longer qualify for that federal funding. And so it would have the impact of taking that revenue source out of the system at the state level, although that revenue would still go to the local districts that qualify for it. So it wouldn't take it out of the state; it would just take it out of the state level. But AML was saying, let's undo that cap, and for those districts who want to spend more, let them spend more, and for those districts who don't want to spend more, that's okay as well. That was really the only comment that was made during the entire presentation about funding sources. The rest of it was all about spend more, spend more, spend more, spend more, spend more. And I think Representative Ruffridge did a service during the hearing when he said this, and I'll quote from the Anchorage Daily News comment on what Ruffridge said. Both Ruffridge and Senator Mike Cronk, a Toke Republican also serving on the committee, have said that education task force discussion should be shaped by the state's fiscal situation. This is what Ruffridge said. I think we all actually have a necessity to answer the question, what would be the way that you personally, those testifying in favor of increased spending, what would be the way that you personally, or people that you talk to, people in your circles, would choose to fund these additional elements? That is, who pays? How are we going to pay for the additional spending these people are talking about? Just saying, as many testifiers did, the legislature will figure that out. No, we won't, Ruffridge said. We've had that in front of us for a long time. This is exactly the same, the flip side of all of the testimony that's gone on over the last decade about spending cuts. Every time that somebody would get up in front of the legislature and say, oh, the solution to all of this problem is spending cuts, just cut spending. When they were asked what spending they would cut, the response has been, oh, the legislature will figure that out. You just need to cut spending. It's not our problem where you cut spending. You need to figure that out. And the legislature never has. They've just kept spending. And now we've got the flip side of that. And fortunately, Representative Ruffridge, at least thus far, is bringing it out. We've got the flip side of that by people in the education community saying, we need to spend more, we need to spend more, we need to spend more. And no one saying where the heck the additional dollars are supposed to come from or how the legislature is supposed to raise the additional dollars. And Representative Ruffridge is sort of pushing back in the same way that those did during the spending cut years by saying, where would you make where would you raise the revenue? This hearing is sort of in fantasy land if they don't, if they, the testifiers and the representatives, the legislators on the panel, if they don't confront the where's the funding going to come from for this additional spending, if they don't address that additional issue. Because everybody can say, oh, we need to spend more in this area. 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 If they don't have the responsibility of coming forward with where that revenue is supposed to come from, who we're going to affect, who's going to be hit by that increased spending, who's going to fund the increased spending. If they don't have to confront that, there's no ceiling, there's no pushback, there's no counterbalance to we need to spend more, we need to spend more. If you force testifiers to come in and say we need to spend more on X, and I think we should pay for it by progressive income tax, or we should pay for it by deeper PFD cuts, or we should pay for it by a flat tax, then you're going to have some constraints on the conversation because people are going to say, oh, I don't want to pay more for that. It's nice in the absence of having to come up with the funding source. It's nice in the absence of that to say, oh, we need to have retirement, a defined benefit retirement. We need to have, more in the classrooms. We need to have higher teacher salaries. We need to cut down on classroom size, so we need more teachers overall. It's all nice to say that if you don't have to confront the constraint of where the heck the money's going to come from. But if you have to confront that constraint, if you have to say, as those who advocated spending cuts did in the last decade, if you have to say, where is it going to come from? Where are the spending cuts going to come from, or where's the additional revenue going to come from? If you have to confront that, then you have a balance at least between you have a constraint on the increased spending that you're talking about, and people start pushing back on that increased spending. So I think he was alone in pushing back. Ruffridge was alone in that pushback out of the what are there 8 panel members or so. He was alone in that pushback, but at least he was making the pushback on that issue, and that's an issue I think that I hope he keeps articulating. Senator Cronk articulates along with him. The only 2 Republicans on the committee, on the task force. I hope they keep pushing back on that.
Right.
And I hope it's a issue that starts resonating around the state as people start talking about what the recommendations are.
But again, Brad, this was not surprising. Again, looking at the makeup and understanding that this is 100%, as Kevin said, 100% kabuki theater. That they knew that they basically had an outcome that they already wanted, and they're looking for political cover for that kabuki theater as they go through, and that's where we're at right now. That the only answer is more money, but again, there is no more money. How do we do that? We had they had to rob an account to pay for this SNAP thing, which we're going to talk about in the next segment. They had to rob money out of another account because they just don't have, they didn't have $10 million laying around out of a state that's got a $6 billion budget. They didn't have $10 million just laying around to try and offset this emergency here. And so, where are they going to come up with, another $300-400 million for forever per year forever to try, if they increase, that's just assuming they increase the BSA by another 1,000, try and reach that $1,800 mark that they were looking at. This is crazy. That this is the answer.
I want people. So the assumption is they'll do it through PFD cuts, right? There's still 650 plus or minus million out there in PFD. So the assumption is they'll do it through. I want people to have to confront that. I want testifiers to have to say that we will pay for it through additional PFD cuts. We will pay for it through taking additional money out of the pockets of middle and lower income Alaska families. Notwithstanding the fact everybody on the task force is in the top 20%, notwithstanding a lot of those pushing for increased spending are in the top 20%, we will pay for it by taking money out of the pockets of increased amounts of money out of the pockets of middle and lower income Alaska families. I want them at least to have to say that. Right. I do give credit to AML, and again, the Alaska Municipal League. I need to dig into this deeper about exactly what they were saying, but I do give credit to them for raising the possibility that the local government would have to would pony up additional money if they want additional spending in their schools. As I said in a previous column, and we talked about previous landmine column, and as we talked about in a previous segment on the show, I think we have a huge disconnect in Alaska. We have the nation's lowest local contribution to the school systems. The state funds a huge, the biggest chunk of the school systems, whereas in the rest of the nation it's like 40% local, 40% state, 20% national, federal. In Alaska, it's like 80% state and a minor share coming from the local. And as a consequence, you have the local school districts who are making the decisions about, teacher contracts and making the decisions about striving for class size and all that sort of stuff. They're not paying for it. They're paying a very small share of the total cost. So I like AML's proposal. I think there's merit to AML's proposal when you get to the who pays question of saying, okay, you want more spending in your school district, you pay for it locally. I think there's merit. I think there's merit in that.
And I want to dissect that a little bit during the break here, because again, this is part of the reason we do that, and the reason that they limit it is because there's federal funding attached to it, and the federal funding has conditions. We could just stop taking the funding, in which case we could do whatever we wanted. But the thing is, it's a significant amount of money. So we'll talk about that here in the break. But we've got number 3 coming up, which is a doozy. We're going to talk a little bit about the SNAP benefits and more. But again, nothing surprising. Final thoughts here on the education task force and their points, Brad.
Well, nothing surprising in terms of pushing for increased spending. A little bit of a pleasant surprise out of what AML had to say. and a pleasant surprise out of what Representative Ruffridge had to say in terms of pushing back on those calls for increased spending without talking about where the money's supposed to come from. But generally speaking, no surprises.
Right. Who pays, right? That's the biggest question amongst this whole thing, is who pays. And only a handful of people in the whole legislature seem to be asking that consistently. All right, Brad Keithley, Alaskans for Sustainable Budgets. We will continue here, back with more right after this.
If you missed the show, you can listen to it on your time with Dukes On Demand. Oh, and it's free. Like America used to be. Streaming live every weekday morning on Facebook Live and MichaelDukesShow.com.
Okay, Brad Keithley, Alaskans for Sustainable Budgets. The weekly top three continues. So we were, again, this was my question earlier on the last year when we were starting to talk about this, and this concept of, increasing local contributions came up because some people are paying up to the cap already, and it's an artificial cap that's been brought on by this federal money, which is supposed to fix inequity by basically saying people who live in their communities can't spend more on their schools if it outpaces smaller, less prosperous communities, I guess I should say, in their thing. And there's that equity money that comes out of that. But you're saying that wouldn't necessarily matter because the money would then go directly to those communities versus going through the state's hands. I didn't hear that part of it. So walk me through.
So the money is coming on behalf of rural districts that have substantial federal presence, substantial federal ownership of lands in their districts, or other substantial federal presence, perhaps. And so it's coming as a result of the federal money in lieu of taxes, in lieu of property taxes that might otherwise be paid on the federal lands. The federal government is contributing money on behalf of those districts. It's a little artificial because the money comes to the state if the state abides by the terms and conditions of that money, which is that there not be a greater disparity than X between the amount of funding going to those districts that are not funding as much as other districts are. If the disparity is X. And so the state has fought hard to keep that source of money coming to it. $160 million is my recollection of it. States fought hard because it reduces what this otherwise is coming out of the state coffers for the BSA. If the state breached the disparity, if the state no longer enforced those limits that are required by the federal funding, attached to the federal funding, if the state breached those limits and no longer had limits on the disparity, the funds would still come. They would just go to those districts instead of being spread statewide, as happens now through state funding. They just come directly to those districts as they earn it, as those districts are entitled to it, calculated on the basis of what federal lands, the sheriff's federal lands in their districts are. So it would come into the state. It would just be targeted to those districts. And the concern by the state is, the reason this gets to be a state issue is the concern by the state is, we'd have to come up with the difference then to fund the full BSA. I mean, basically what the state says is, here's the BSA, here's what the federal government is paying, and so we only have to take out of state funds this. If you remove the federal funds, if the federal funds go to those districts, then the state would have to pay the full BSA. One response is, well, you could lower the BSA in that event down to what you're otherwise paying, with the state funds. But that's what's going on, and I think that works. Frankly, I'm in favor of that. In favor of doing away with the disparity test and increasing the burden, because it would increase the burden on the local school districts to pay their own way. I mean, if they want want great schools, if they want low number of students per class, if they want to pay teachers, the top dollar in the nation, then have at it. but fund it from your sources. I mean, do that balance because you're the one deciding what to pay the teachers.
Right.
Do
If
that
you
balance inside your own sources.
Yeah, if you want to keep these schools open, right? These schools that are at 50% capacity, and that's what we're seeing, all the picketing and the protesting and the signs and everything. Keep our school open. Well, great. Well, now you're going to have to pay for it through your property taxes or whatever else if you want to keep doing that. And there's an actual cost. It's not just go to Uncle Sugar and ask them for more money. It's now, we've got to pay for it. And that may change the equation.
Yeah. I mean, because one of the greatest lobbyists, one of the most powerful sets of lobbyists that comes down to Juneau for increased school funding is the local school boards, right? I mean, we need more for Johnny's in our district, for Johnny's in your district. We need more for them, and we can't do it. So, the state's the one that funds it. So you need to appropriate more for us. If we shifted an increasing share, not the total burden, but shifted an increasing share, a material share of the burden to the local districts to pay for that, then, oh my gosh, if we pay teachers more, we're going to have to pay for it. We're going to have to, convince our constituents that are electing us to the school board. We're going to have to convince them that we did the right thing by paying our teachers more. And the constraints on spending aren't any longer as much at the state level, where we found there's no constraints. The constraints aren't as much as the state level as they start showing up in the local level. So I think AML's proposal, they may not intend it this way, but I think AML's proposal of doing away with the state having the contribution in aid, the federal contribution in aid. I think the AML proposal to do away with the state having it has merit.
All right, we're going to jump back into it. Here we go. The Michael Duke Show, Common Sense Radio.
The Michael Duke Show, proudly splitting the left versus right dichotomy. Yeah, I had to look that word up too. I don't think it means what he thinks it means. Here he is, though. That guy, Michael Dukes, the one with the show.
Okay, continuing on, Brad Keithley is our guest, the weekly top three. We're already at number 3. How we get here so quickly. Number 3 for Brad is the irony of Alaska's SNAP funding crisis. Boy, irony? Tell me it ain't so, Brad. Tell me there's no irony when we're dealing with Alaska legislature. Tell me that that's ironic that there's never any irony with the Alaska legislature.
Over the last week, as the SNAP crisis has developed, and the SNAP crisis for supplemental nutrition, since we're spelling out acronyms, supplemental nutritional assistance program. See, I actually know what it is. Since we're food stamps. Oh, there you go. Cut to the chase. Since we're talking about as the SNAP crisis has been developing over the past week, and the crisis is that the federal government, since it shut down, the claim by the Trump administration has been they weren't going to fund the SNAP programs after the 1st of November, that they'd run out of funds, and as a consequence, everybody was running around like chickens with their head cut off, concern about what would happen if the SNAP benefits were cut off. Over the course of the last week, I've just been chuckling as I've seen various legislators, just up in arms about the SNAP crisis and about oh my God, what are we going to do, and how do we ever resolve this problem? I've been chuckling because of this. It's the same legislators who are running around being concerned about it as who voted for PFD cuts.
Yeah.
Voted in the budget for PFD cuts.
Oh yeah.
And so, since I'm not fun at parties because I spend all my time, fiddling with numbers, I went and started doing some numbers. So we have, according to the calculations these legislators are using, we have 66,000 people in Alaska, individuals in Alaska who are suddenly without any form of support and relief because the federal government is cutting SNAP.
Right.
So I took that times the amount of the PFD cut this year, what they would have received in October had we complied with the statutory PFD. Those same 66,000 or most, there may be a few who don't qualify for PFDs, but those same 66,000 who we're concerned about the loss of SNAP benefits, and did that at times the PFD cut, which was $2,675 plus or minus $2,675 per PFD. If we had paid out the statutory PFD to those 66,000 people, that would have been $175 million. $175 million that would have hit their banking accounts or their pockets or however the heck they receive it. It would have been $175 million that hit that 66,000 people. The whole SNAP crisis is about $27 million per month.
Right.
And it's not going to be for a full year, because eventually the federal government will open. Eventually SNAP will get funded at the federal level. So it's $27 million a month for however many months this crisis drags on. That's the shortfall in what everybody's concerned about, the SNAP beneficiaries not receiving. They're not receiving $27 million. If we had paid out the PFD to those same 66,000 people in October, they would have $175 million in their pocket, more than enough to offset the loss of SNAP benefits. What's going on here is control. I mean, so the legislature decided, those who are now running around concerned about SNAP benefits, the legislature decided in its infinite wisdom that it wouldn't put $175 million in those people's pockets. The legislature would hold on to that $175 million, and they would decide what programs, what benefits, what places that money would be spent. Wouldn't put it in the hands of the people. The legislature would decide that $175 million, counting on SNAP benefits, I suppose, to help deal with the fact they've taken $175 million out of those people's pockets, counting on SNAP benefits to sort of fill in the gap that would be created in their food security. What happened when SNAP benefits got cut is all of a sudden this whole charade that the legislature goes through of taking money out of people's pockets and saying we're doing it for your own good got exposed, because rather than the SNAP benefits showing up, which those legislators rely on when they take $175 million out of their pockets, rather than the SNAP benefits showing up, all of a sudden they didn't show up, and so all of a sudden the $175 million they took out of their pockets makes a difference. People are now going to go hungry, because the legislature, not as much the SNAP benefits, but because the legislature took $175 million out of those same people's pockets in October. That's what's really going on. The legislature took that $175 million, relying on the federal government to contribute $27 million a month. The legislature took $175 million out of their pockets. And all of a sudden the whole thing got blown up. The whole jerry-rigged house of cards got blown up when the federal government said, oh, we're not going to contribute that $27 million. So instead of the legislature saying, oops, we shouldn't have done that, we should go back and make sure they get those people get the money that is owed them under the statute, under the PFD statute. Instead of doing that, the legislature all of a sudden said, oh, wait, we got to come up with $27 million more from the state government to fill in that hole. It's just, I mean, the irony of what's going on here, or the hypocrisy, or whatever the heck word anybody wants to apply to this, what's going on here is just stupefying. I mean, we got a legislature who is actively taking money specified by statute to be distributed to these people, $175 million to go to these people, actively taking money out of their pockets, diverting it elsewhere.
Right.
And then all of a sudden going crazy when the federal government doesn't come up with $27 million on a monthly basis for its share of food stamps. Oh my gosh, man, it's a crisis. Huge. What about the $175 million? If taking $27 million out of their pockets is a crisis, what about the $175 million you, the legislature, you legislators who are complaining about this, all of a sudden concerned about SNAP? What about the $175 million you took out of their pockets? Isn't that an even bigger crisis?
Right.
But
well,
no.
And I went at this from the other direction. You went at it from the top down. I went at it from the bottom up, and I said, 66,000 people, $27 million. Okay, so what is that? It's $409 per person, essentially, of the 66,000. So if they had gotten their full PFD, they would have essentially a backup of 10 months worth of food that they could have purchased for themselves. 10 months worth of food. But the legislature said, no, you can't have $1,500. You can only have $1,000. You can't have the $2,000. You can't have the $2,500. You can't have the $3,700 that you would have gotten. We needed that to spend on X. And like you said, now all of a sudden it's a crisis because, well, we spent the money on something else, which we thought was more important. And it turns out it's not more important than people eating. Surprise. It's not more important than people eating. It's a simple $409 a month that they could have had in the bank and be ready to go to pay for their family's food, but they just couldn't do it.
It sort of reveals something else, right? It reveals that those legislators who vote for PFD cuts don't trust, don't value, aren't confident that the recipients are going to spend the money in a way that benefits the recipients, I guess. That somehow, we know better. The legislature knows better how to spend your $2,700 or $2,675. The legislature knows better how to spend that than you do, and we know better how to spend it on your behalf than you do. And then it gets something like this happens, and it's revealed that, oh my gosh, they would have had more than enough to cover their food. There's an interesting study that I'll go back to at some point and do a deeper dive on, but there's a study that looked at how those in the lower income brackets actually, what they actually do with PFDs. And turns out that on the whole, they save them. And then they allocate them out over the year, either to pay credit cards or to pay rent or to do this or pay for food or this, that, or the other thing. They don't blow them on one-time expenses. The people who blow them on one-time expenses are largely those in the upper income brackets who don't need the money anyway. And so what do we do with this? We'll go spend it on a vacation, or we'll go spend it on something else. Those in the lower income brackets, the ones the legislature isn't trusting, the ones the legislature says you have to do it through food stamps, you can only get your money through food stamps, those people are actually saving the money and would have had that money in their savings accounts to be able to pay for food.
Brad Keithley, Alaskans for Sustainable Budgets, the weekly top three. Brad, thanks so much for coming on board. Folks, we're out of time for hour one. Hour two is dead ahead. Back with more right after this. Again, this is the whole thing. This is, we know better than you how to spend that money. And then, oops, guess not. Guess there's a crisis. Guess you're going to have to go home.
Michael, one of the two of us has gotten hung up. Yeah. Well, if it's me, I'm sorry. If it's you, I'm even sorrier, because that means you'll need to reboot the system before you go to time. I lost you there for a while. I've lost you again. Well, Michael? So what's really odd is the chat room is still showing. Michael's gone now. So again, if it's me, I'm sorry. This didn't occur while we were on the air. And I don't have a.
I don't know.
Have a message.
Oh, there we go. It was I don't know. StreamYard crashed. I still had internet, but StreamYard crashed out. But how ironic, Brad. I was just saying before I got so rudely interrupted that how ironic that these are the people we know how to spend your money until we don't, but then trust us for more. This is that's it. That's the whole thing there, right?
I mean, that's why the PFD is so important. It is Alaskans individual share of their commonly held wealth. It is their dividend from their commonly held wealth. They ought to be trusted to know how to spend it. And if you've got a few bad apples, like everybody wants to, use the example of the snow machines or whatever the heck, people that one-time spending that people do, that they use as the example of why you can't trust these people. If you got a few people who do that, okay, that's fine. But what you're doing is you're punishing the remainder, the ones who go out and save that money and use that money and spread it out over the year and use it for basic necessities and use it to have a cushion if something happens like SNAP is cut off. What you're doing is you're punishing those people by taking their money away. And the whole SNAP debacle just exposes that for what it is. We know better how to spend your money up until, some government program that we're depending upon goes away. And then turns out we didn't know how to better spend your money.
Exactly. Well, and that's the thing. I mean, this is the whole planned economy, planned this, planned that. And it turns out that bureaucracies and politicians don't know better than the average person or the free market in how to make these things work the best. And that's part of the problem, 100% for sure. And there's, like you said, it's hypocrisy. It's a combination of it's irony. It's it's irony. It's hypocrisy and irony boiled together into an utter stew of badness. So it's crazy. All right, Brad. Well, everybody wants to know what Brad's doing. Where are you at? What are you doing? What are you listening to? Where are you going?
It's music. I'm in Seattle. I'm going to a concert tonight. It's a double header of a Scottish band that I love and a U.S. Irish music band that I love at the Triple Door. Some will know the venue in Seattle, and so I'm in Seattle following the music to go to a concert.
The Pied Piper of music draws Brad all over the world. And what are you going to do? It's the only thing that he is fun at parties, contrary to our commentary here on the program. It's just the musical parties that he likes to go to.
Yeah, there you go. There you go.
That's what it is. He doesn't like those big cocktail parties with all the politicians. He'd rather go to a music festival. And I can't say I blame him.
They certainly don't like me at those cocktail parties.
No, they do.
Because I asked them questions. Oops, no, we don't want to answer that question.
No, yeah, we'd like to ask some questions, Brad. And, I'd love to see you on the other side of the microphone in front of some of these Senate committees and House committees, because how do they answer the questions? The problem is that they can't actually answer the questions and articulate an answer. And that's the hypocrisy you're pointing out here. And I think it's great. So it's good to have you on. Anyway, thanks for covering for me for the minute there that I was going.
I didn't do anything.
I'm like, oh, well, Brad's got it. Don't worry. It looks like Brad's still on. It'll be fine. Brad's there. I don't know what happened.
Brad was saying, oh, Michael's gone. I don't know what to do now.
Yeah. Well, just Phil. You've done the radio long enough. You know what to do. So, all right. Well, Brad, thank you. Thank you for coming on board, my friend. I hope you enjoy your musical interlude, and we look forward to talking to you again next week.
Michael, as always, thanks for having me.
All right. Thanks so much for being part of the program today. Okay. Let's just fingers crossed that doesn't happen again. That was weird. But here we go. The problem, again, to me, goes back to dependency. We got these people who have all, I was reading this article when we're talking about the declaration disaster and everything else. And, Bryce Edgman, half of his constituency is on the SNAP program. And this person has got a huge part of their constituency that's on the SNAP program. And that's just the one program. There's another headline that I didn't even get to Well, we'll have to get to this here in a second. Here we go. Let's do it.
Whoa, buddy. Put that thing back in its holster. We haven't gone anywhere.
I don't understand.
Check out the MichaelDukesShow.com for information on how to get access to the podcast.
Welcome to the party, pal.
The Michael Dukes Show.
The greed and the entitlement is astounding to me.
What more could you want from a low-budget radio program?
This is a dumpster fire.
That was just BS.
It is time to get a new perspective.
We know just what you need, and we've got just the open wide. And prepare for a steaming hot cup of freedom.
I just don't fathom it.
The Michael Dukes Show, streaming live across the world.
Live around the world on the internet at michaeldukeshow.com and across the state of Alaska on this, your favorite radio station and or FM translator. Hello, my friends. How are you doing? Thanks for coming in and joining us today. Hour 2 of the big radio program, and we are ready to go. I believe I believe we are just finishing up here with Brad Keithley from Alaskans for Sustainable Budgets, the weekly top 3. Luckily, we had a little bit of a snafu, but luckily it happened right in the middle of the commercial break, so that worked out all well for us. But here we are, proceeding on into hour 2 with some of my thoughts for what Brad had been talking about, and I guess here's the problem. Here is the base, I guess, the basis for everything that Brad was talking about there at the end of the last segment with this SNAP crisis and everything else, is that we have just, and the SNAP thing obviously is a national issue, right? It's a federal issue, but it just highlights how much of a problem that we've created for ourselves, not just in the state of Alaska, because Alaska has become a dependency state. There's no two ways about it. We have become a dependency state, but across the nation, the same kind of thing. Brad was basically dissecting it and saying, look, if we had just paid the PFDs, these people would have enough money to be able to feed themselves. And he's 100% true. And that's, just even on a single income, a single parent household, if all you got was your PFD at a full amount, you could pay for, if the average, because again, 66,000 people times $27 million, which is what they said it was on a month, is $409 a month. So you're telling me that if a single person got their full PFD, they couldn't pay or have money in the bank for 6 or 7 months worth of food that they would have received in a SNAP program. But again, the legislature, in their ultimate wisdom, decided that they knew better than these people how to spend their money. And when it turns out that they didn't know better than these people how to spend their money, then it's a clamor and it's a cry and it's, oh, we're so sorry. We'll be better. Trust us. We'll be better next time. But the problem is dependency. And again, 66,000 people in the scope of a 700,000 people in the state is, it's not bad. It's a 10%, right? Okay. 10%. Great. But then you look at other things and we start talking about things like Medicaid and things like that. And we've got 1/3 of the state is on Medicaid. We don't, how many in housing assistance and how many in this? I don't know, but there's a lot of it. I saw this article that I wanted to talk about. This article's been out for since it's been a month since this article came out, and I keep meaning to bring it back up. It's been sitting on my screen every day, and I keep wanting to come back to it. And this is the perfect time to fit it in, because it's a headline that's talking about the majority of U.S. children rely on Medicaid. A new study finds about 3 in 4 children nationwide relied on government subsidized health care. And three out of four rely on government subsidized health care. That's a huge point of dependency. And sure, anytime you change anything, Medicaid or CHIP or the Affordable Care Act or anything else, the ripple effects are going to be huge. And I would argue in some ways that that's by design. Once you get everybody or a lion's share or a majority of people onto some sort of program, you know that that program is going to continue into perpetuity, because the minute that you change anything, too many people will be hurt. Too many constituencies, too many dependents will be hurt. And that's what we've talked about here on the program over the years is, we get a program that says, oh, we're going to start this program here in the state. And it would really be, it's not necessarily a must-have now. It's not a must-have. It's a nice-to-have. But don't worry, the federal government will pay for it for, forever is usually the thing. The federal government will pay for it. Don't worry about it. But what normally happens is that, the federal government will pay the lion's share for a handful of years. And then eventually they'll start saying, well, you guys got to pick up your share. And so then it slowly starts. And it slowly starts to not be a 10% match. Now it ekes its way up. Maybe it's a 50-50, or maybe in the end, the federal government's only contributing 10%. And now the state's on the hook for 90%. And the same people that cried about the program and complained and said, don't do this because it's going to cost us money, and we don't have the money for it. When they come back and said, see, I told you we didn't have the money for it, we need to cut this program. Now the advocates of the program are saying, well, we can't now because, these people are depending on it. We can't do that. Now people are depending on it. What are we going to do? That's the problem. 3 out of 4 children are dependent on government subsidized health care. Now, when my kids were growing up, I've never been wealthy, right? Middle to upper middle income. Pretty much my entire adult life. But even with 5 kids in a middle income household, we weren't depending on Medicaid or some kind of, I guess until we got the Obamacare tax credits, I guess that's considered, but it's not Medicaid, it's regular health. But they're forcing that dependency on you. Really, if you look at Obamacare, that's just another way to I was happy to pay my $900 a month or whatever it was for the health care of my family. And then Obamacare came in and, it went up to $2,000 a month or something for the same health care. And sure, so then, so we had to get the subsidies and everything. So it's forcing you to do the things to be able to survive. For the good of all, of course, for the good of all. But Brad's 100% right on this. They have decided that they know better than you how to spend the money. And now they're calling for things like, more education spend. And Brad kind of brushed over this. I don't know if you saw this, but Mark Sabatini over at the Juneau Independent, Sabatini used to write for the Juneau Empire, but he quit and started his own little blurb. But Sabatini is writing for the Juneau Independent, and he wrote about the Educational Task Force. And something that I mentioned, but Brad really didn't get into, is that the task force is now suggesting getting rid of the Alaska Reads Act. This is the Read by 9 program. This is the Read by 9 program that took 5 years, 6 years to get through the legislature, and is starting to show progress and is starting to show promise. And now they're like, we think you need to get rid of it. The Alaska Council of School Administrators made an unremarkable recommendation this is Sabatini's words, an unremarkable recommendation to, quote, eliminate unfunded and underfunded initiatives, citing the Alaska Reads Act as the lone example, the single example that they could come up with. Now, the Reads Act has already gotten bipartisan praise because it's gotten some great results. But of course, all the school district officials are concerned about it because they're saying they're not getting paid enough to do it. They don't have enough money to cover the labor, the material costs, and everything else. Well, that's a prioritization problem. That's not a programmatic problem. If the program is working, that's a prioritization problem, not a funding problem. And, you know, but here they are. The Alaska Council of School Administrators is calling for it to be repealed. The one thing that's shown promise in this whole deal. I mean, that's insane. That's absolutely insane. Yeah, I mean, and maybe Frank's right. Frank says Alaska is becoming a dependency state. Why weren't we a dependency state? I mean, see, we have been kind of a dependency state already. We like to think of ourselves as rugged and the last frontier, and we don't give a damn how they do it outside, and we'll do all this other kind of stuff. And you know, we'll do, but at the same time, we have been so dependent over the course of, well, I guess I will say this. Oil has been good and bad for the state of Alaska, right? Remember that when we got that first royalty payment in 1969, the state budget was like $162 million, right? And we were doing okay. I mean, we were making it. But the second we got all that oil, then everybody decided to get on the bandwagon and start to look at the government as if it was the sugar daddy that took care of everybody. And it you know, that's where that dependency got. So yes, we have grown into a dependency state. You're right, Frank. We're not becoming, we are and have been for a while, but people just refuse to look at that and see that because again, we want to think of ourselves. We want to think of ourselves as rugged individuals and Alaskans, and we don't care and everything else. But again, all of these problems come back to a prior. I mean, we've got this task force, which we knew what they were going to say before they even convened, because they all individually had said how much we need more how much we need more school funding. They'd all said it. We knew that this was just more political cover than anything else to get it done. But to come out and say that we need to eliminate the Alaska Reads Act, that's a problem. Even Melissa, former school board president, said absolutely a priority problem. Fairbanks made Alaska Reads Act work without any extra funding. It obviously can be done. You obviously can prioritize what's important, and obviously getting these kids to be able to read is important. And again, how long did it take us to get that piece of policy pushed through the legislature? Things that the school districts and the school board should be pushing on their own. Shouldn't they be embracing ideals from other places that have delivered great results? You would think so. I mean, you know, you would think that if some other place was getting great results out of what they were doing, why wasn't the school board? Why did it take the legislature to jump in and do all that? This whole thing is just, it's madness. It's madness. All right. We're about to jump back into it here with Chris Story, who's coming on a little early today. He's going to be talking with us about the fair tax. But again, just look at this. Look at the hypocrisy of what Brad was just talking about. Crisis. It's a crisis. It's $27 million for 66,000 Alaska. That's only $409 per person. If they had received their full PFD, problem solved. If we just stop being dependent on the government for everything and start looking to ourselves, problem solved. If we would just be more efficient in our own communities and our own districts, we wouldn't have to shut down the Alaska Reads Act or anything else unless it's part of the plan, I guess. I mean, is that it? The one program that's delivering excellent results? Well, it's just not funded enough. Well, then that's a you problem, Jack, not a me problem. All right. Well, we're going to continue here in just a moment. Chris Story coming on board. We're going to talk about the latest update on the Fair Tax Act. We'll do a quick recap on what we're talking about and then see what kind of reaction Chris has been getting around the state on that. We will continue the Michael Duke Show, common sense, liberty-based, free thinking radio. We return with more right after this.
What is that?
Common sense. Regularly heard on American radio. Michael Duke Show. Radio.
Okay. Chris Story, the man from Homer, is about to join us here in just a second here. Sorry, I was doing something over there. Okay. Let's see if we can get him on the program, on the air, on the thing here, and see what he has to say about wood ticks, lunatics, politics, and all that stuff as well. Chris Story joins us right now. Hello, my friend. How are you doing this morning?
Good morning, Michael. Doing well.
And the first thing I hear is the snoring dog.
There's two of them. Don't forget,
Oh,
Tallulah and Dragon, and they are both zonked out here in the library.
Yeah, I could see that. They just. I'm like, "How you doing, man?" And I hear. I'm like, "Okay, it was either Chris or the dog." One of the two. Chris,
Yeah,
or
you've been listening to the Michael Duke Show.
Yeah, exactly. That's what's going. Oh, I see. Got him all squared away. All right. Well, oh, see, look at that. We can't mock them. No mocking dogs.
Tallulah's giving you grief, man. She's like, enough.
All right. Well, Chris, again, we're going to talk
puppy privilege.
We're going to talk a little bit about the fair tax here in this first segment.
Yes.
And then we're going to jump into it in segment number 2 about for the PMA and everything else, and we'll jump back. So I'm going to put you on hold for just a second, okay? Don't go anywhere.
Roger.
Okay. Chris Story, our guest. And we've got about 3 minutes, folks, and I hate to do this to you, but I have to take a short, quick break. We're going to be back here in just a second. Don't go anywhere. The Michael Duke Show, Common Sense Radio. Okay. I appreciate you being patient with me there. But as Deadpool said, I didn't wear the brown pants today, so we had to do our thing. All right. We are about to jump into this here. Make sure you like and share, like and follow, do the whole thing. Get ready to go. Oh, the dogs are back there. They're comfortably resting again. It's all good. We're going to continue here with Chris Story, starting off talking about fair tax. Chris, what's our PMA segment going to be about today?
The power within.
The power within. Okay. So first it'll be the power without property taxes, and then the power within will be the second one.
That's it.
Just
nice
had to throw that out there. I know, it was nice, wasn't it? All right. Let's we're going to be back here in just a second. Chris Story, our guest, the Michael Duke Show, common sense, liberty-based, free-thinking radio. Let's do this thing.
The Michael Duke Show. Not your daddy. Wait, sorry. Not your daddy? Ooh, not your daddy's talk radio. Huh. Whew. I was scared for a second. Thought we were going down. Here's Michael Dukes and the show.
Okay. Chris Story is our guest, the man from Homer. You know him as a realtor and a potter and a guru of positivity and an author, all-around good guy. He's also the brainchild, the brain trust behind the Alaska Fair Tax Act, which is a California Prop 13 style tax that he is proposing. Had originally proposed just for the Kenai Peninsula, but looks like it's going to need a lot more horsepower than that because it has to be changed at the state level. And so we need to know kind of what's going on with this and the reasoning why and everything else. So I've asked Chris to come on board and give us an update. So good morning, Chris. Can you give us give me a thumbnail sketch again of what the Fair Tax Act is before you give us an update on where we're at?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the Fair Tax Act was an outcropping of an overreaching assessing as a result of an arbitrary and inflated market reaction to the pandemic and the response thereof. In other words, the $6 trillion stimulus that went into the economy, the artificially suppressed interest rates that were just basically funded by the federal government for a period of several years that it would otherwise have slowed the rapid rise of assessed values. All of this to say, what property tax is regressive. It's not based on consumption, production, or your ability to pay. It is the most regressive tax we could possibly imagine. And Title 29 is in conflict with itself when we talk about fair market value, and that this is a taking, albeit quiet. It is a taking, and it is non-constitutional. Property tax is non-constitutional. I'm not a lawyer. I'm not a scholar. I'm a GED holder. I'm telling you, this is the truth. And the Fair Tax Act was designed to say, hold on, you're taxing Americans on unrealized gains. The property values have increased. The rising tide has floated all boats. And now you are taxing gains that they've not realized and may never in their lifetime realize. These are homes owned by people that intend to die in their homes or pass it along to their heirs. So that has to stop. Number one, we have to stop taxing unrealized gains. Number two, senior citizens, to quote Ron DeSantis, governor of Florida, will you ever own your home, or will you continue to rent it from the government for the rest of your life? We have to stop taxing senior citizens on your primary residence. And thirdly, we need to roll back the assessed values to a pre-pandemic level. I picked 2018. The consensus amongst the group working on this was 2019. Fine. We'll use 2019 assessed values shall be the baseline tax value going forward. If you buy a home today at $500,000, you're guaranteed, if this act were to pass, you're guaranteed for the rest of your ownership, you'd pay tax on nothing more than $500,000. And if you can prove a reduction in value, via an appraisal, then you could actually petition the assessor's department to reduce your tax to that lower appraised value, but it shall not exceed what you paid for it. Otherwise, we encroach back into taxation of unrealized gains. And we all rejected that concept when Kamala Harris brought it forward in 2024 election. We've rejected it outright for your 401k and your stocks and your bond holdings. Why wouldn't we do the same for your real estate?
Absolutely. I think it's a valid point, and I think it's a great question. And I think it's one of the reasons why, again, I've been a strong advocate against property taxes for so long, because, again, how can you ever own anything if you have to continually push it and pay the government to be able to participate? So you initially had started at the local level with the assembly, and then discovered, this is going to be a statewide issue. I know you've passed it off to our local representative here, Sarah Vance. But tell me what's the status right now of the Fair Tax Act? Where do you think we have to go from here?
Title 29, as I said, is in conflict with itself. And so former Assemblyman James Bayston and myself got together. We drafted what would have been an amendment to the tax policy on the Kenai Peninsula Borough. The goal was, what if we were able to create a tax haven within Alaska? What if the Kenai Peninsula Borough could enjoy this kind of tax reform? Maybe it ends up statewide, maybe not, but at least it doesn't matter. If we could be the tipping point for tax reform overall, great. If not, we'd be a tax haven in Alaska. Well, the borough attorneys obviously got quickly involved and said, nope, can't do it. You guys can't even think about passing something like this. You've got to change Title 29 in statute in Juneau. You have to change the state law.
State statute.
And so exactly. So we turned around and said, okay, let's make an amendment that would redraft the entirety and the intent of Title 29. As again, it is already in conflict with itself, because it calls for every assessor in every borough to assess property to its, quote, true and fair market value as of January 1 each year. Michael, as I've said till I'm blue in the face, the definition of fair market value is the most a willing buyer will pay and the least a willing seller will accept. You cannot achieve that number absent a buyer and absent a seller, absent a willing buyer and absent a willing seller. So at best, all boroughs can do is make an educated guess or an estimate. I'd like to call it a guesstimate. That's all they can do. But that's not what the law calls for. The law calls for, quote unquote, fair market value. So already it's in conflict with itself. Second to that, it's arbitrary, dare I say capricious, because you can appeal your tax value. And if you're willing to settle it over the phone and not go all the way to the Board of Adjustment and Equalization, if you're willing to just kind of work with them and talk to them through it, you know what, we can dial down the classification on your finishes. Why don't we just dial it back to a C3? And how about we take $28,000? Okay, great. That's happened hundreds, if not thousands of times, thus proving this is not science. It is arbitrary. It is not a scientific process. It is, to the best of their abilities, a process with which the Borough Assessing Department does everything they can to be, quote, fair. I don't doubt that, but I doubt the process simply for the fact that it's already in conflict with itself and it's proven arbitrary, and yet we're the ones who pay the price. For example, Michael, last year is the first time ever, 2024 is the first time I've ever officially appealed the property tax value on my own home. And in the process, they discovered a few things. They discovered, since they'd been here last, I'd paved my driveway and put in a beautiful rock wall, retaining wall, and a really nice fence. And all those things were pointed out to me when they came to my property. And it's like, okay, so it's punitive. Number one, keep your mouth shut and pay your bill. Number two, we are watching, and we will penalize you for improving your property. That's so contradictory to the American dream. That is antithetical to what our forefathers and foremothers fought for and revolted against. And yet we sit here by suckling at the teat every year and dutifully pay our bill and just hope they don't catch that we put in a study or an accessory dwelling unit for grandma to live in.
Yeah, I mean, that was the big joke in Fairbanks, is that half the time people have finished most of their house, but they leave the Tyvek on the outside because they're afraid of getting dinged on the property taxes if they finally put that T111 up, the siding up, because again, they're afraid of it, and it with good reason. you could see that stuff jump at any given moment. And it is terrifying. So you've decided now it has to be changed in Title 29. I know you've passed it off to Sarah Vance. What's happening? I know is it going through legal review? Are we doing something? Is this something that's going to be on the floor of the legislature? What's going on?
Yeah, nothing. It's complete stasis. There's no updates. Sarah's getting zero feedback relative to where it's at in the process. And I got to tell you, it's frustrating. It's a frustrating process. I'm not a political animal myself. I'm a political analyst. I enjoy watching politics just like the avid sports fan does on Sunday watching football. But I'm telling you, it's a different story when you lace up and you get into the arena and you see how the sausage is made or not made and delayed, and you want to pull your hair out. John Faulkner was kind enough to take a recent blog post I'd written on the Fair Tax Act from our website and republished it on Must Read Alaska, and it got a fair amount of attention. But what surprised me, Michael, wasn't the attention it got, because it was a widely read publication, but what surprised me was the revolt within the reaction. In other words, people were angry almost. There was a visceral reaction to this doesn't go far enough. You're not stopping the problem with your, quote, Fair Act. It's not fair at all. We need to revolt and disband all property taxes. So we may be looking at a complete revolution. As we look at this Fair Tax Act, all we're doing is tweaking around the edges. The reality is we're not even getting anywhere with that. The best that our politicians, our elected overlords, the best they can come up with is to what I call the Harvey Weinstein effect. You will only increase your assessed value 5%. That's all. Well, just 5% per year. We'll cap it at that, guys. How about that? Okay. So that means in 5 years, it's 25%. That means for sure, most of you are going to be increasing your tax assessed value by 5% per year. That's the best they can come up with. Okay. Well-intentioned as that may be, the reason I call it the Harvey Weinstein effect is imagine you show up at the next HR meeting, Harvey's standing over in the corner, kind of looking down at his feet. The HR manager comes in and says, look, you guys, here's what's going on. Y'all know what Harvey's been up to. We're going to go ahead and say, ladies, relax. Harvey's only going to be able to make 5 unwanted advances a year. He's only going to brush up against you 5 times, not 6, not 10 or unlimited. Harvey's going to be able to brush up against you and take some of your dignity 5 times a year. That's it. We're capping it so everybody can relax. Now, yeah, he'll have touched you 25 times over the next 5 years, but don't worry about it. And by the way, he's probably not going to notice you at all. So just relax. Right. You're fine.
Just don't worry about it. Now, so this has gone to ledge legal, right? I mean, this has gone up to legal, but there's just no word coming out about it.
That's correct. Yep, that is correct. I love the way you just abbreviated that. It makes you sound such a sophisticate. Ledge legal. Yes, it's in ledge legal, Michael. And that's where it lies, like so much fodder on the floor of society.
Well, again, they're terrified. I mean, like you said, I agree. I think the backlash, and anytime I talk about this with anybody, and I have talked about this quite frequently with a lot of people, to talk about your vision here, and almost 80% of the time, I mean, I think 100% of the people have been in favor of it, but 80% of the time, like you said, people just says it doesn't go far enough. It just doesn't go far enough. It should be no property taxes, and quite honestly, that terrifies the political class in the state, because that's where they get so much of their money and power from. They wouldn't know what, and it's a sure amount, right? It's a set amount, so they know that they get it every year, versus a sales tax, which could go up and down a little bit, not much, but it could. And so people are, I think we're primed here to basically be able to maybe potentially do something. But I guess in the last minute here, what do we need to do, Chris? How do we get this thing rolling? Do we contact our legislators? Do we keep pushing on this? Do we come together? And if they're not willing to modify the current tax structure, do we just say, fine, if you guys don't want to modify what you got, we just want to throw the whole thing out? What do we do?
I think, to be quite frank with you, and it's not just because I visited Boston Harbor this summer, I did. it's not just because of that visit that I say this. I think it's time for a revolution. I really do. I think it's time for the Boston Tea Party to happen here in Alaska, and we call it the Dutch Harbor Tea Party, whatever you want to call it, Kachemak Bay Tea Party. It's time to do so. I just don't. I think at this point, to be quite frank with you, what I've seen the inside of the belly of this beast, there is no speed with which they'll move that will satisfy my hunger. I think honestly, it's going to take a revolution. I think it's going to take us saying enough. I'm done. Call your politicians if you want to. You could do the same thing by coming here and talking to Mike Cavalier, King Charles, and get the same results. I think it's time to form a revolution, a People's Republic of Alaska that stands up and says, we're done. And I think it's going to have to come from the bottom up, period.
So we're talking citizens initiative potentially to do something like that,
Yep.
Which, I mean, again, that's one of those things where you're like, you guys, you should have talked to us when we get a chance. And instead now we're going to, if we can create a petition that outlaws property taxes and tells the cities and the municipalities, you guys will have to figure it out, whether it's a head tax or a sales tax or whatever, but no longer will people be indebted to the government for their own property, or be taxed on the unrealized gains of their own property. I think that would be that'd be a great thing. So I'm 100% behind you on that, Chris, 100%. All right. Well, we're going to go to break. And when we come back, Chris is not going to be quite so wound up about stuff. He's going to be a little more sanguine. And what's our topic for the positivity segment, Chris? I've already forgotten.
The power within.
The power within. All right. So we're going to be talking with Chris Story here in just a moment. Back with more. Don't go anywhere. The Michael Duke Show. Common sense, liberty-based, free-thinking radio. Back with more and Chris Story on the power within right after this.
We're broadcasting live through a series of tubes.
Allowing all of these entities to provide streaming stuff going on the internet.
Well, it's kind of hard to explain. Sorry. Streaming live every weekday morning on Facebook Live and MichaelDukesShow.com.
Chris, Brian in the chat room just quoted, "You will own nothing and be happy." That's kind of government's whole point at this point, right? I mean, you will own nothing ever and be happy about it.
And smile.
Right. I mean, not to poke a sore subject, but I'm gonna. I noticed your flag is down. What's going on there? Did the man win? Did you let the man win, Chris?
Oh, do you mean my feather sign?
Yeah, your feather flag outside.
No. But we do have a what do you call those machines where they with the paddles and they stand back and they put them on the person's chest when they're having a
defibrillator.
Defibrillator.
Yeah.
That's it. We've got one of those coming because the next time Ed from planning department comes to our office and goes into near, fit and a cardiac arrest over our feather sign when we put it back next year, I want to be able to resuscitate him. No, we took it down as we do every year in the fall. No, we just we put it up in the spring and took it down in the fall because it's a tough one in that they don't weather well in the winter and we get the storms and so no, we did not succumb to, and nor will we. Which is interesting, Michael. It's another reason that if I sound a little jaded relative to political involvement, I took the time to actually rewrite and offer an amendment to the sign code here in Homer and submitted it to what I thought was a friendly planning department. And even my friend on the planning department said, yeah, we're not going to go and pick through this onesie twosie. We're going to take on the entirety of our zoning code all at once. And I'm like, yeah, but I'm offering you a very elegant solution to a very minor problem that your planning department is running around town with their hair on fire. This is a really elegant solution, local, by the way, not from the offices of Agnew back out of Anchorage at the tune of $650,000. This is a free local solution to a problem that you've been in search of. And so it just was completely rejected on its head. And even again, a friend said, hey, we're not going to do this onesie twosie, pal. Sit down, relax, calm down. We have the experts coming from Anchorage with their alligator shoes and their leather briefcase and their pink polo shirts, and they're going to tell us how our zoning code should go. And it's like, oh, come on. At what point do we just stop and say, no, this is our town, this is our community, this is frankly our state, and we're not going to allow outside influence to overwhelm what it is the individuals want here locally and statewide.
Are you attending? There is, I guess I'll announce this on the other side, but there's an open house on Thursday. There's an open house. They're going to update Title 21, which is the zoning code. I don't know, I'm assuming that the flag, that all the signage and all that stuff is part of that Title 21. Are you going to be joining that community forum on Thursday?
No, nor did I participate in the comp plan review, which cost the $450. It's $200,000, or maybe it was $400 for the comp plan review and $250,000 for Agnew Beck to come down and tell us how the cow ate the cabbage relative to our zoning code. And that's no, thank you. I wish anyone well who wants to go, but I've been to these dog and pony shows, and no, thank you.
No, thank you. No, thank you. Okay.
In fact, I'll be doing ballroom dancing that night with my wife, so that will be far more fun.
Okay, well that's good. But again, this idea that we can't even change our own code, that we need some out of town expert to come in and tell us what our code should be. I mean, that's right. A racket. That's a racket right there. I don't care. I don't care where you come from. If the local folks in a small community like Homer, for example, can't figure out, or even in Fairbanks, right? If people that's still a smaller town. If they can't figure out their own sign code or their own or change that's ridiculous. I mean, we need the expert to come in and tell us what to do.
Right. Yeah. And I was party to this in about 2006, I believe it was, or 5, I forget. And same firm, Agnew Beck, but then it was $250,000. So it tells you a little bit about the inflationary aspect of our economy. But yeah, $250,000. And I objected to the idea that these folk were coming in from out of town then. And when I say alligator shoes, leather briefcase, and a pink polo shirt, it's from that experience. The gentleman was very, very polished and very slick. And he was essentially orchestrating a room of locals, and kind of, you could see, leading where ultimately he wanted the comp plan review to go, but allowing you to believe it was your idea in the process. And I bowed out and said, I'd rather go watch. I have to wash my hair. I'm going to watch paint dry tonight and have more impact.
Sorry, I got a bar of soap to eat. I've got other things that I'd rather do. It's nutty, man. It's nutty that this is where we're at. I've never understood the concept of the property tax and all this do-goodery. And of course, the biggest examples of this is all the videos on YouTube of watching HOAs go at each other and everything else. This is the same kind of thing, only at a broader level. And it's insulting and it's frustrating. Okay. All right. The power within. Here we go.
The Michael Duke Show. Not your daddy. Wait, sorry. Not your daddy? Ooh, not your daddy's talk radio. Whew. I was scared for a second. Thought we were going down. Here's Michael Dukes and the show.
Okay. Chris Story is our guest, the man from Homer. I got him all riled up about property taxes and zoning and codes and everything else. And now we're gonna pull him back and see if he can put on his positivity hat. He's going to talk with us about the power within. And so let's get started, Mr. Story, sir.
To me, it's one conversation, Michael, because I think honestly what I'm saying about property tax reform and what I'm suggesting about us individually, locally taking back control of the future and the forecasting of what our economies are going to look like and what our zoning codes are going to look like is truly a celebration of the power within, what you've already got within you. I believe there's greatness within you, as Les Brown said. And I think just like an acorn possesses the mighty oak tree within, I think you possess all you need to tap into your greatness. and you get to define what greatness is for you. Like, imagine this. Imagine Elon Musk wakes up tomorrow morning and he has a net worth equivalent to that of Donald Trump. Well, he would be depressed. That's like, where did my fortune go? Even though Donald Trump's worth about $7 billion by all estimates. Like, still, that would be just a complete defacing of his own ideal. And so you get to decide what your greatness is. And I think you've got an ability, and I would wish that each of us would just trust our instincts more often. The reason I put that into the Millionaire Code is that trusting your instincts, I believe, is one of the greatest superpowers, that if we tap into it and tap into the power that is within us, then I think you would find a much smoother road ahead. I think you'd find more contentment even in the storms of life.
The Millionaire Code available, by the way, at ilovehomeralaska.com. Shameless book plug at the same time. But I think you're right. I think that sometimes we are so nervous about trusting our instincts on a lot of that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I have found that in my life, when I trust my instincts on something, that it very rarely has steered me in the wrong direction. Sometimes even it may look like that in the beginning, but it's, when I'm trusting my gut, when I've gotten all the information that I possibly can and tried to make a decision, no matter how scary or how difficult, trusting my gut seems to always be the way, because otherwise you're always second guessing yourself, right? You're going back and going, oh man, would it have been better if I had just gone with my gut on that and trusted my instinct? And I think that's you talk about that in the Millionaire Code, where, what if my gut's wrong? But the bottom line is, generally speaking, you'll always, at least in my mind, feel better about it if you go with what you feel is right in the long run.
And the more you rely on your instincts, the more finely tuned they become in your perception of them. And I would say this also, Michael, as we talk about this power within you, the people that are framers of the Constitution and founders of this great country were talking to. They were, make no mistake about it, talking to you in the pursuit of happiness, in the pursuit of your American dream, although that doesn't exist in the Constitution. We know the spirit of it does. Not one single person, and this goes around the world, not one single person is born with an aspiration for an achievement that they don't likewise have the power to fulfill or bring it to life. In other words, you're never going to be born with an achievement dream, some aspiration in your mind that you do not likewise have the corresponding power to create or to manifest in your life. That said, it's not going to come easy. Like the acorn, you got to plant it. You have to put it in the right soil conditions, have water, sunlight, fertilizer. But unlike the oak, you're not rooted in place. You can move about the cabin. The captain's turned off the fasten seatbelt sign. You can move in the first class if you'd like, or you could remain in the back of the plane by the lavatory. It's your choice. You get to move about the cabin of life and fulfill whatever dream it is you have inside you.
So the power within is there in all of us. And so I guess my question is, as I always do when we discuss these things, break it down for me. How do I discover what that is? And is it a talent? Is it a power? Is it a belief? What is it, this power within? How do you break it down for me, Barney style here?
Dan Brown has a new book out called The Secret of Secrets, or The Secret of All Secrets. I can't remember, but I heard him discussing the book the other day, and it's about consciousness. And I thought, ooh, pretty interesting. I might actually read this Dan Brown book. But what I found most interesting in the conversation is they turned their topic to LSD. And he said that the LSD doesn't cause you to see something that's not there. According to the research, it actually allows you to see and it removes the filters of your brain. What? It removes the filters of your brain. We have so many and too many thoughts to control them. So our brain is equipped with filters to protect us, filters to constrain what is allowed in through your eyes and your senses. It filters things down to a finite amount, because otherwise we'd go absolutely insane if we had to process every single thought that was coming at us all at once. So here's the plan. Do not do LSD. Do not do that. Here's the plan though. Take 15 minutes a day and focus your thoughts like a laser. And you use your thoughts to create images in your mind, which can actually kind of become movies in your mind if you focus just 15 minutes a day on a particular thought or a series of thoughts or a complex idea that you want to resolve or solve or come to some conclusion on. You've got to be able to train your brain, even just 15 minutes a day, using the power of visualization, which is already within you. And every single person has it, whether you use it or not. You can and do visualize. You can become more adept at this through practice, which is the reason I put it into the Millionaire Maker spot number 2, is that visualization is a plan towards wealth. It is part of the plan of achieving anything you want, to include a great deal of money or net worth or fitness or health or relationships or whatever it is you want. Using visualization works, and it helps focus your thoughts to a point where you can tap into the power that's already within you.
So you're saying focus on a goal or a dream, and you're saying what? 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 15 minutes a day? Is that what 15, you do?
Start out 5, but goal is to get to 15 minutes a day, almost like a meditative state. It's similar to prayer. It's where you're getting quiet, contemplative, and you're visualizing what it is you want and connecting with the power that's within you, which, by the way, is eternal and has always been there.
Well, and that's, again, the power of the subconscious. We've talked many times, and many people have talked about this power of the subconscious, that as you feed it over and over and over again, these things, that eventually it will start to work behind the scenes, inside you quietly, to try and pull those things together, and you'll make connections and do things that you never would have considered before, right? So that's all kind of part and parcel of it. 60 yes. seconds, Chris, final thoughts on the power within today and the fair tax, if you want. I'll give it to you.
Well, to your point, I think the subconscious does more than just respond to what you give it. It actually generates and actually taps into the eternal mind, into the greater mind and the greater consciousness that is around us, and allows you to not be overwhelmed by that unfiltered reality, which is too much in the cosmos, but allows you to tap into that great power that's within. It is within our ability. If we can legalize dope in Alaska, we can stop the legalized theft and taking of our private property through taxation. I believe that's within us to solve this problem on our own. We can do it. I think you can solve any problem you set your mind to.
All right. Well, we appreciate it, Mr. Story. Thank you so much for coming on board, folks. Tomorrow, Senator Mike Shower and Bernadette Wilson, our guest on the program. We will see you guys then. Have a great day. All right, Chris, any final thoughts? Because, I mean, I like what you're saying. I like where you're going. I mean, I would argue that many people, including those who we would consider to be on the opposite side of the political spectrum, could get behind this idea of no property taxes, because we all pay them. And it sure would be nice to own our things. And so maybe we should be focusing a few minutes a day on, how do I help that? How do I make it happen? Maybe it's the group mind, that we talk about, the mastermind, where if a lot of people are thinking on it and focusing on it and describing it, maybe we could start to get some movement on that reduction or removal of property taxes. I think that would be that'd be a great ultimate goal at this point.
And ultimately, what you and Brad talk about, and I can disagree with Brad all I want, what I don't disagree with is the concept of discussing where government's money comes from. I think that's a really worthwhile conversation to have. I think applying and deploying Parkinson's law relative to the revenue, I'm using air quotes around the word revenue, that the government has, meaning restrict the amount of revenue coming into the government, will necessarily restrict the amount on the other side. If we limit one, then we either go to the credit card, the national debt, if you will, which was 38 trillion, approaching 40 before, probably 6 months from now, who knows how much it'll be. But that we don't have a credit card like that here in Alaska. All we've got is our constitutional savings and reserve. And to protect that, I think we have to restrict the amount of government funds that they get their hands on. And then the other piece of it is, I think, also always remembering when we say get their hands on, and these people and politicians, they're our neighbors, literally just stood up and said, outside of what Dunleavy and maybe the lieutenant governor, there ain't a lot of money in this business.
Right.
They're more or less volunteers. When Mike Shower comes on and he's taking his time away from piloting, he's sacrificing to get to Juneau. So it's not a money making opportunity. I think that's lost on many of us because there's the othering or tribalism that happens when somebody gets elected. But it doesn't mean we don't hold them, quote unquote, accountable, right?
Except with that 67% pay raise, now they're all in the top 20% income earners across the state because, now they can make $140,000 a year as a legislator kind of thing. But, I agree with you. And you're talking about Parkinson's principle. For those of you who don't know what he was talking about, that's the principle where work expands to fill up all available time. When applied to government, it's when government expenses and spending expands to fill up all available money. If we starve the beast, they have less to spend, and that's the important part. All right, Chris, thanks, my friend. I look forward to this. We need to expand this idea on the fair tax. I mean, what are we doing? Because if it's not going to come back, if they're going to keep stonewalling this, if we're not going to get an answer on it, then you're right. Maybe this needs to go to the people. And instead of going with a California style Prop 13 tax, maybe we just make it illegal to tax people's private property, personal, private, recreational or residential property, and maybe it's just business property. Because that would make sense. I could get behind that. Everything else doesn't make sense. You have to be able to own something.
Yeah, I agree. I've got a parable I've written. I'll be sharing on my broadcast today at 1:00. So tune in.
All right, we will be doing it. Thank you, Chris Story, for coming on board, my friend. Good to talk with you. Appreciate you being part of the show today.
All right, Michael. Take care.
All right, folks. That does it for me. We got to go. We will see you guys tomorrow. Mike Shower, Bernadette Wilson. It's going to be fun. We will continue the Michael Duke Show. Common sense, liberty-based, free thinking radio. We'll see you then. Have a great day.
We've shed our terrestrial radio skin, and now we are slimy lizard internet people. It's the Michael Duke Show.